Wanted to give you some vaccine updates this morning, both good and bad. So making headlines this morning, Vice President Pence, along with his wife Karen Pence and the Surgeon General, all being inoculated with the coronavirus vaccine on camera for the public to see. You can see the Vice President there
to see it.
Getting prepared to be stuck with that big needle to help instill public confidence.
There it is.
That's pretty important, actually. I mean, for people to see that the leader, you know, these are people who are leaders of the country, to see them getting it on camera at least will help to instill some trust, because obviously we need a sufficient number of people to get this vaccine so that life can return to normal. That's one thing that's going on. Not as good news.
Yeah.
Well, let me give you one other piece of good news before I get to the not as good news. It looks like the Moderna vaccine also approved. That will start rolling out very soon. There are 3 others who, you know, hopefully will be not too far behind. So we're moving in the right direction with all of that. However, it's a weird piece of news, and I really don't understand what's going on with it. Pfizer says that they have millions more doses just sitting in a warehouse awaiting U.S. government shipment instructions. So according to them, and this is according to a Pfizer statement that they released, they say they have millions more doses sitting in our warehouse, but as of now, we have not received any shipment instructions for additional doses. So they're waiting on the federal government to tell them where to send this.
Not exactly sure what the hell's going on here, but this is what I warned about, which is that there's going to be, when you're moving 300 million doses, there's going to be bureaucratic nonsense, nightmares. That's what Pfizer is saying. They're like, hey, we got all these vaccines like sitting in this warehouse. Like, do you want them? And then you have all these state authorities which have to accept them. And then this was my favorite. Some hospitals, when opening up their box of vaccines, found more vaccines. And they were like, it's like Christmas. They're like, we have extra. And Pfizer was like, oh yeah, you can use those if you want. And these hospitals were like, yeah. And so like the janitor's getting a vaccine or something.
That's great.
And I was like, cool. But I'm like, how does that happen exactly? I mean, you know there's going to be slippage. You know there's going to be some logistical stuff. And this is exactly what we're seeing here. But, you know, whoever is out there and you're responsible for this, please get it fixed.
Get it together.
Please.
Well, it reminds me, too, of that story we covered of how Pfizer in the summer gave the Trump administration the option to prepay for and secure, millions more doses.
Right.
And they were like, we're good. Right. Thanks. I'm like, what are you doing? Say yes. And, okay, granted, this was before we knew 100% that the Pfizer vaccine was going to be successful. But, like, if you're going to spend money on anything, place any sort of bet, like, yes, please get as many vaccine doses as possible. So that was bizarre. Another piece of bad news, troubling news, is Cedric Richmond, who is a top advisor to Joe Biden. And this is another interesting thing we'll get to in a moment. Top advisor to Joe Biden, Cedric Richmond, says he has tested positive. Now, he was down in Georgia recently while Biden was there as well. They have said that they were not in close contact, that when they were together, they were outdoors, they were masked, all of those things. But, you know, obviously very concerning. Biden has not gotten the vaccine yet. I think what I heard is that he's scheduled to actually receive it next week, which I strongly support. He should be getting it. The president should be getting it. Everybody in the line of succession should be getting this vaccine as soon as possible. But, I mean, look, we've got a bunch of old people who are running this country, and they need to get vaccinated. They need to be kept as safe as possible. So troubling news on that front. And then the other piece that we sort of prematurely put up there, which is my fault because I said the wrong order for the elements before we started the segment. Anyway, Sweden's king says we have failed over COVID-19 as deaths mount. Why is this significant? Well, Sweden was the libertarian dreamland case study for how you could just continue life as usual and bet on herd immunity and it'll be great.
Didn't work.
And it'll all be fine. Well, this has been a failure. They've had higher deaths, of course, than their neighbors. And just as much economic damage.
That's the key part. Yeah. Just as much economic damage.
And, by the way, because they had this foolish notion of we're just going to continue life as usual, they also didn't create the safety nets that their neighbors did either. So actually people have ended up suffering more because their livelihoods were not backstopped to the extent that others who planned for shutdowns ultimately were. So Sweden's shining example officially coming crashing down here.
Yes, so please nobody send me any more but Sweden articles.
That genre of writing is officially dead.
Over.
One more rising for you after this.